Hi, everyone. I see there are around 56 people in here, so very great to meet all of you. I will try to go directly to the point, but by sharing my screen and introducing you to guys to a skill that I took a long time acquiring. And hopefully now I'd love to share some of the tips with you guys. It's how to build an effective presentation. Let me know if you can see my screen. Okay, I think it seems like you guys can see my screen. So I'll just get started. Essentially, building an effective presentation is a very important skill, but believe it or not, there are 5 steps that are the most important one to get your presentation from 0 to 1. First step is to know the deliverable of your presentation. This might sound vague to you, but essentially there are 2 main types of presentations. First type of presentation with very busy slides, and this is targeted towards an audience they will read your slides. Second one, for an empty slides that is targeted for audience that are more willing to listen. And here it all depends on the context of your presentation and why you're delivering it. For instance, now during our presentation, you will not be handed the slides, meaning that I want you to focus on what I'm going to say and not what's on the slide. Therefore, I would favor listening slides and empty ones, more empty ones. However, if let's say I was giving you the presentations and I want you to keep the presentation and use it as a reference for your future research, then I would want more busy or busier slides. So that's very important to know what and when is your audience going to use this presentation such that you see how to design your slides. For example, I'm sure a lot of you are students, and when I was in school, and I could relate to that, is there had 2 types of professors. Some professors that had really busy slides, and I actually like the busy slides because it would mean that I don't have to take notes. But the professors that would have empty slides and I didn't have to read them, pretty annoying, and I'm sure you can relate to that. Step 2 to building an effective presentation is knowing your audience. For this, 2 main questions to ask. Who is your audience, and what do they need to learn? Notice here that I said need to learn and not want to learn. An important trait here is that you don't want to tell people in presentations everything that they know already. You want to bring new content to them. This is why before designing this presentation, I went on and actually surveyed a few people to ask what do they know, what do they not know, and this allowed me to better design the presentation. In terms of who are they, this is mostly for the language that you will use during the presentation. If these are professionals, then you probably need to use very good vocabulary and almost speak like if you would write. If they are students, then perhaps you could go for a language that is more geared towards younger population and use words such as cool or hey. So now you know your deliverable, you know your audience. Step 3, it's crafting your story. Step 3 is crafting the story. This is the story that is going to go on for your presentation. And I think this step is by far the most important one. Here's a tip that I used. It's on each slide, only one idea. And before designing the presentation and designing the content of the slide, what I would do is just write down the storyline. So I would literally take the slides and only write down the tagline, the title of the slide. So here, for example, I started by writing step 3, craft the story. This is very important because it will allow you to be way more structured when you speak, and it will make sure that you only fall within the purpose of one idea per slide. So let's see an example. This is a presentation, a twist of the presentation that was given by Harry last week on a business plan. If you read here, the title, it says value proposition. Current solution doesn't address international student needs. When the first reflex when someone reads your slide is they're going to read their titles. So here it's very confusing because you read both the value proposition as well as the current solution doesn't address the Chinese international student needs. So it talks both about competitive aspects and about value proposition, 2 ideas which make it hard to grasp for the user or the audience. A better way to do this is to segment this into 2 slides. So start by 1 slide, just having value proposition, what problems are you trying to solve, and a second slide, and say current solution doesn't address international student needs. Once you do that, then start filling out the content. So now you know how your presentation is supposed to be. Oh, sorry, you know who you're supposed to deliver your presentation to. You know the format of the presentation, and you have your storyline by just writing the headline in each single slide. Next step is to actually do the bulk of the work, fill out the content with slides. So here, simple rules that wouldn't like to spend too much time on, but 3 things that are very helpful. 1 is charts, 2 bullet points, and 3 images. These subconsciously, when the audience see them, they focus directly on them, and it's a very concise content. However, similarly, you should avoid too long sentences, because no one is going to be able to read and focus on the long sentences as well as hear you speak. Or too many numbers. They will not know which one to focus on. And lastly, and this is to me the worst one, I'm part of the audience, irrelevant information. Almost impossible to know what to focus on. And this loses the point of the presentation. So let's see an example. This is a slide we had done to present you the summer venture program. So here, like you see the summer venture program, it has 4 main ideas where you're going to become: a clear career path, a guaranteed eye-catching resume, solid soft and hard skills, and a strong network. It also includes a referral, but the referral is not here, a guaranteed referral. So now you see this slide. It has the 4 informations very concisely, as well as the bubbles that make it like look prettier. So this is like an example of a good slide. Now, lastly, you have your presentation done, you have your deck, you have to deliver. So the delivery part is the most important one. And here, it's like other communication skills. You have to focus on 2 things. 1, to stay confident, and 2, focus on the tone of your voice. These is going to sound vague to you, and it's going to sound like things that like it's needed everywhere. And I agree with you. But let me give you some tips that you could use. To show good energy and have a good tone of voice, 1 tip I use is to actually speak in a louder voice than usual. Actually, now I have a roommate that is texting me on my phone and telling me you're too loud. And this is just because I'm speaking very loud to show my energy. And perhaps you guys, like I hope at least, have not noticed. A second tip used for energy and to show confidence is the body language and how your hands are positioned. 1 tip that is used is that if your thumbs are positioned upward, this is a sign of confidence. So this is something that is a bit harder to show during a Zoom call. However, I'm sure that you guys will have to present eventually. Hopefully COVID will finish sooner than later, and you guys will be able to put your hand up to show your confidence. So these are like the 5 steps I wanted to focus on for presentation. So just to say it again, first one, know the deliverable. Know if you want busy or empty slides by understanding the context of the presentation. 2, know your audience to address your language and your content. Then start the content by just your storyline and just writing the headlines of each slide. Make sure only 1 idea per slide. Then fill out your slide with very concise content. Use images, icons, bullet points, and charts. And lastly, speak with confidence and focus on the tone of your voice. So this is how I build presentations. However, I think it would be more useful if I actually show you guys and we look at your presentation together. So I'm going to open LinkedIn slide share. These are and see like presentations that people give, and we would look all of us together to like slides and determine, for example, and determine how they are. For example, this is a presentation on social media trends. So there are 45 slides. Let's try to go through them quickly such that then we could go to Q&A. So first slide, welcome slides, great slide because it has like images, very concise, not too much information. Here, one thing is that you'll notice that they write the title of the slide on the left. People tend to read from top left to bottom right. And here, like, it's a bit confusing. You don't know what to start. You don't know if you should start with what's the weather in your city, or if you should start by tell us where you're dialing from. A bit confusing. I would not recommend this. And perhaps, like now I'm noticing, once they say, like, tell us where you're dialing from, and what's the weather in the city? That's two different ideas. So this is not a slide I recommend. Next slide. Agenda. Very clear, very concise. 5 numbers, 5 ideas. Great. This is just a title slide. Then what is it? Here, it's great that it has like the numbers and the bubbles. Great work. However, on top, you see very long text. And I'd love it if like you could, I'm sure that none of you would have read this text. It's been like 15 seconds that I'm on the slide, and I still haven't read 3 words of what's in that text. So this is the single proof that having 2 long sentences is bad. Slide 7. So this shows platform of opportunities. These are like images, great. One thing you will notice though is that the images are not perfectly aligned. The Instagram pictures are slightly bigger than the Facebook and WhatsApp ones. Here, like the size of the picture is also not the same. So this is something to avoid. One thing I didn't write in my presentation, but it's a given that your formatting should stay consistent. Next slide, same thing. So let's not comment on it. Here, interactive commerce. Again, look here, so how it shows so many sentences, very hard to focus. So now what I think would be great to do is that we will read these 3 sentences together, was the text, and understand what are 3 components that we could write. So here, like this talks about interactive commerce. So Adidas teamed up with Snapchat to launch its limited edition baseball cleats. Second sentence, Adidas created a game that you can play in Snapchat called Baseball's Next Level, where customer can play a famous MLB athlete. And then creative content will take a front seat as social commerce features to become increasingly popular. It is more important than ever to add value and put customers' experience first. So here, too many ideas, too many things are written down. Here is how I would do it. I would split this into 2 slides. First slides only talk about the Adidas and Snapchat partnership. I'd love to like do the slides live with you, but we only have like a few minutes left and I want to leave time for questions. So we'll leave that for another time. But what I would do is I'll have the blank slide and then here like just a picture with Adidas and Snapchat. Then Adidas created the game that you can play in Snapchat called Baseball's Next Level, where customer can play as famous MLB athlete. Here again, on the right, just the game itself, a picture with trying to keep a format consistent. If the pictures are rectangular, I would also try to have the Adidas and Snapchat logo on a rectangle rather than a circle. So just pick these 2 and I would voice over it. So these are like some slides that we did. Now what I'd move on to do is like actually ask you guys, what do you think of, I mean, or these slides, I guess it's too easy. Like you guys already know that there is like too much content. So let's see if there is a slide that, and like get your guys' opinion. Let's pick this one, for example. It has like slightly less text, but I'd love if you guys could comment on this slide. So here, let's take 2 minutes and everybody write down on the chat what they think of the slide, and then we'll comment on that. So I push everyone to write on the chat what they think, if it's a good or bad slide, and what can be improved. Okay, we'll wait another minute, then I guess I will just go with commenting myself. Image does not immediate relevancy. That's true. Bullet points needed. Yeah. Yeah, great points. Aaron, you're right. The image does not immediate relevancy. You're completely right. And adding to that, actually, the image is very blurry. Like I'm having a really hard time reading what's on it. So I don't understand the content. Robert, like you and I are on the same line, and I think it's what Aaron said. And Elena, you said bullet points are needed. Absolutely. Without bullet points, we don't know what to focus on. There is too many content. No, I'm sure no one would even read it. Proof, I think I can, yeah, if we exit this, if something cool with LinkedIn shares, you can see how many people click the slide. Only 14 people click the slides. Let's see, compared to like the initial slides, 129 people clicked. So you see that the more content there is, the less and less people click the slides. So this was about it. Thank you very much for listening. And now before we move on, I would love to open it to questions you might have. So please feel free to ask me any questions about communication in general, presentation, tips, other tips you want, and even if it's questions you have about your career or the summer venture program. We'll take like 5 minutes to answer questions. If there are no questions, we could just move on and spend like a few other minutes analyzing like slides that people did. How do you stay confident during a presentation? Yeah, that's a very great question, Sam. And the first thing is that with Zoom, it helps a lot because you don't see your audience. But to me, the biggest hurdle is like facing an audience. When I'm presenting during an audience physically, what I do is that I try to fix a point in the audience, usually not someone straight, but someone in the back, and stare at that person. This allows me to forget that I'm talking to tens or hundreds of people, and it makes me feel like I'm only talking to a single person. So that's the first thing. Second thing is like not more general, not just during a presentation, but also during your regular communication skills. There are a lot of tips that people studied and that you could learn about to stay confident. Some are the ones that we shared with you, like have your hands facing upwards, raise the tone of your voice. But there are also a lot more that we're actually like discussing in the summer venture program. And the next question is, how do you pick the theme color you use? That's actually a great question. Here, there is no specific rule of thumb, except to me, the fact that the one that you like the most and that fits the color of the logo of your company the most. As simple as it is. For instance, here, like summer venture program, it's green, so I picked something that would have like, would be clear on it and like have a green on it. Here, like we picked, Harry had picked the black and white and blue just because we had no logo and these colors seem to fit together. What's great is that with things like Google Slides and PowerPoint, you're already given themes. So feel free to choose anyone you want. Would you recommend to use Google Slides or Microsoft PowerPoint? That's a great question. So I would definitely recommend Google Slides if you're collaborating with people on building the presentation, because it's very easy to make edits. But if you're doing a presentation for yourself and you take longer, I would prefer PowerPoint. PowerPoint has more tools that would allow you to make your presentation with the right format, the right structure, and less like attention to detail mistake. Do you make eye contact with audience or just simply focus on your presentation? Great question, Grace. Actually, that's something that I'm still till this day struggling with. But what I try to do is like memorize a bit of my presentation, not all of it, just the main points, and then look far in the audience. This shows that I'm a little bit more confident. How much time do you usually spend on preparing your presentation? Here, Jamison, I think like it's like practice. It's like everything where practice makes it perfect. It just depends on how good you want it to be. But I think like there is potentially like unlimited practice, unlimited time you can spend practicing. The nuance here and like the key is that if you practice too much, you might sound robotical. So what I would advise is to alter your practice a little bit. For instance, start by just rehearsing your presentation, and once you know it well, try to change the wording a little bit, or try to talk to people in the audience. Do we need to turn on the camera during a Zoom meeting? This is, I think the big thing here is to know your audience and depending on who you're talking to. So if you're talking to many people, it's preferable. But if you're talking to people that don't have their camera, I think it would be okay to not have a camera. If you're projecting your screen, definitely not needed as much. However, sometimes it could help. Elena said, when is it appropriate to use note cards during presentations? I think it depends on how, what would be on your note card. I would definitely not advise having too many things on your note card. And I would depend this on the deliverable of the presentation and the context of it. If it's in the context that allows you to have a note card, definitely like feel free to have it. If you're not sure, I would think it's fine to have note cards as long as you can keep eye contact with the crowd. I've seen presentations where people would only stare looking at the crowd, and seen presentations people just stare looking at note card, and it makes a big difference. So these were all the questions we had. I hope it was useful. If you have any question, please feel free to reach out on WeChat, LinkedIn. You could reach out through Easy to me, and I'll be more than happy to answer them. Now, with that being said, this is literally just a 20-minute pick of a program that we designed that spends that has close to 60 to 80 hours of interactions, one-on-one interactions, to help you design effective presentation, make you as ready as possible for the jobs. I'd love to speak about the program, but I think it would be more appropriate if I leave the mic up to Molly to discuss it. And if you have any questions about the program or else, I'm more than happy to chat with you. So very nice to meet you, and I will hope to talk and see you guys soon.